Hello and welcome to my very first portrait painting video. I've only ever painted a portrait once before, and that was without any training or anything, so my portrait painting abilities are not very expert level. In this video, I am painting my brother, but it didn't really turn out as well as I had hoped, but that's okay. Here I'm just doing the rough sketch on the canvas. I'd already sketched one or so just on the sketchbook just to figure out what his face looks like. Here I cover the canvas in liquid white paint. I'm using Bob Ross paints. I don't know, I got them for Christmas. And the hardest thing for me on this was getting the skin tones correct, because they were tough. Here I made my first mistake. I did the background very dark, so it ended up blending in with my very light portrait a couple of times, and it was just very difficult to work with. I think next time I would end up drawing the background last instead of first, and especially when you're using a very dark blue green background, but you're trying to paint something that's yellow and skin tones, I guess. It doesn't blend well. Usually it just ends up being green when you don't want it to be. I used a lot of paper towels just to wipe off my mistakes. I did a lot of experimenting with skin tone colors and figuring out which one looked best. The last painting portrait that I did, I started off with very dark colors for the base color, and this time I didn't like how it looked last time, so I decided to make it very light at first this time and then try to darken it as I go. You can see me there trying to cover up the green and blue yellow background that had blend in with the face. Looking back, I still don't really know what I was doing, but I'm slowly figuring out how to do portraits. I made a lot of mistakes, and there are a lot of things that I did that probably took up more time of this painting than it should have, so I probably could have finished it quicker if I had more experience, more knowledge. But for a very beginner, I think it was an okay amount of experience. Here you can see the portrait that I did of myself the other day on my phone. It looks a lot more normal than this one ended up looking, but oh well. I see that I used a lot of orange under his chin. I wanted it to be more red, but I couldn't get it. I don't know, it was very difficult. And the lips, those were lips are difficult to paint. I don't know how to paint them without making them look weird. It's difficult to paint lips. But I think if I practice a lot more, and I just have to paint them more often, then I'll slowly get better at it. My biggest problem, I think, is blending in without thinking very much, and then like only using simple colors and not blending in enough variety of colors. I think as I went on in this painting, I used more variety. There was one point where I specifically started just adding more colors just to have more colors to make it look more normal. I don't know if we reached that point yet or not, but yeah. So my camera will only record in 30-minute intervals. So that's why a lot of times the camera will stop and then it'll start again, if you notice that. I've also noticed that with oil paintings, lightening things is pretty hard, but darkening things is really easy. Like it's really easy to just add a tiny bit of brown or red, and then suddenly the whole painting is brown or red. But then if you want to lighten something, you have to add a whole ton of white, or whatever color you're planning on lightening it to. So that was a struggle at certain points, but what I figured out is that I can use paper towel and kind of erase the dark stuff that I had accidentally added, and that way it will, you know, be less dark. And adding the eyebrows. Still wasn't sure how to do that, but I had a little green under the chin. I don't know if I should have done that, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I remember at one point, I think it's this point, I added a ton of brown on the cheeks, and it made it look just very strange. So then I just, after a little bit, I kind of just marked it all off and just erased it. But I think it helped. I don't know. It might have a little. And I watched a video, and they started with the eyes. And I think maybe next time I'll start with the eyes, because usually I've done the eyeballs last, just because they're so light and I didn't want to accidentally blend anything in with them and then have it make them look all weird. But I think I can just do the eyes first and then work out from that. But the video that I watched was very more advanced than I am, so yeah. See, the lips are very bright, and I don't know how to make them look more dull and less like he's wearing lipstick. I did end up wiping off a little bit of the paint just so that it wasn't so bright and showing, but oh well. At this point I'm adding some really dark things to the nose and to different parts of it, blending in different colors and adding different little points to it, adding a lot of reds. I still figuring out how much red and how much yellow and how much of brown there's supposed to be in each different shade of skin tone. But I'll get better as time goes on. I think I might have added too many creases under the eyes, because everybody was saying that it looked like an old lady. Whether that was from the creases or just from the overall look that I gave it, I think I agreed with them. There I am erasing and smoothing out different parts of it, making it look more just a smooth gradient instead of blocky parts. I don't know if I really ended up doing enough to the neck that I should have, because it did kind of just end up not super dark. I don't know. It wasn't super stand out. It didn't look like a. It wasn't something that you look at and you say, "Oh, I know what that is." It's just a like you can tell what it is just because it's placed there. I started using a little wider brush at this point, and it worked really well. It was very helpful for different points, like smoothing things out and adding detail on wider surfaces and all that stuff. I don't think I used a small enough brush to do small details, and I wish I had a smaller brush or a finer brush with a very thin bristles, because some of these parts I just had a very wide brush and it didn't really work out. I couldn't add enough detail or the amount of detail that I wanted to add. I am changing the color of the lips, trying to figure out which color I wanted it to look like and what it should look like. I had a lot of different issues with it, but I think if it was just a random painting, then this would be an okay painting, but since it was based on somebody, it looked just kind of weird. There's some parts of it that I did like, that I had done, like the part between the eyebrows and the eyes, where there's just a little shading and then there's light spots. I think those turned out very well. There I am starting the eyes. They were tough. Yeah, last time I did eyes, I messed them up and I blent a whole bunch of blue all in the white parts and it was a mess. So this time I really tried to keep it as clean as I could. I think they turned out okay. They weren't accurate quite, but they were better than they could have been. They weren't as bad as they could have been. And eventually, after I worked on the eyes for a second, I was like, I don't want to make these any worse, so I just stopped where I was. There I am, erasing the lips, I think. I don't know, I worked on those a bunch and changed them. I tried to add eyelashes, they kind of worked, they're kind of weird. That's what I really wanted the light paint or thin paintbrush for, so that I could make the eyelashes fine and not super like weird looking. Here I started adding the hair. You can see my hair. This part was also very hard because the whole background was in the way and it would blend with the hair that I was trying to paint, so it didn't work out very great. I remember my brother told me that he didn't want to see his painting just because he looked like an old lady. He looked very strange.
Okay.
At this point, I had been maybe a day, I think. So I had let the paints kind of dry out overnight, which I think I kind of shouldn't have done, but it didn't make too much of a difference since I was mostly done with the face. I don't think I would have let them dry out as much as they did, but they were still manageable. Here I added a bunch of weird yellow in, and I think it worked out okay. It added a little bit of colors that I think I was missing, but it was still kind of weird. This part it did work out for me to lighten different parts. I used a lot of white in this at this point, and it helped. And redoing the lips again. We're trying to. And blending in different colors. Really lightening all the different points so they didn't look so wrinkly. I think all the shapes and stuff that I tried to use ended up making it look very like strange, and he had a strange face shape. I tried to fix the face shape by the end, but it still was just kind of weird. But oh well, you know, as long as it was fun. That's when I started doing the hair, and all my browns got light green, or they got a little bit of green on them, so I had to use a lot of paint. He has my brother has very curly hair, so and I'm not super well used to painting very curly hair, so it was a struggle, and I didn't know how to paint his hair like color-wise either, because his hair's very brown, but in the picture it has a lot of like golden highlights almost, and that ended up looking very interesting. When did I? It took me a couple of tries just to get any sort of color that was similar. Here I tried using not very much color, but then it just blended in with the brown. So I had to use a lot. I had to mix a lot of paint and then just lay it on very thick. I think that'll come up in a second. Here I'm adding some more details to the face. Did a lot of walking away and coming back. Well, adding more dark points to the face. I don't know why I did that, but I think it helped on the neck. I don't know about on the face. It might have just made it worse. I don't know. I made a lot of strange choices in this painting, but mostly because I didn't know what I was doing, which is fine. That's how you figure it out. I think that's me mixing the color for his hair, or trying to. I added a lot of reds, a lot of browns, yellows, and mixed it in with his face. There's the photo reference I was using. You can tell how different the painting is from the photo. Oh, first actually I added white, or I just used white and I painted different lines for the texture just so that I could see what it should look like theoretically, or just to test out my ability to paint the different parts of it. I don't know if it worked out or if I would use that method in the future, but oh well, it kind of worked. Drawing very curly hairs, very difficult sometimes. And all the ringlets, he has lots of little ringlets in his hair. Very difficult to draw, at least in my opinion. It ended up looking like Tessa Violet, but whatever. He has yellow, gold, orange hair. He said he was fine with it, so I just left it how it was. I added a lot of orange and yellow and red, or yellow, orange, and red. I don't know if I should have done that. There you can see how much paint I was using. I mixed a ton of it, and I just tried to get the texture. At that point I was focusing more on just making it look at least somewhat similar to what it should be, or having a similar feel. I don't know if I succeeded in that, but it looks like a Van Gogh more than a portrait. But oh well, it's good enough. And some parts of his hair were just like they had white highlights, and some parts had yellow, gold highlights, and brown highlights. And very difficult. Added a lot of black to his hair just because I wanted it to be darker. I don't know if I should have done so much black in the back there, if that makes it look weird, but I haven't noticed it since. So I think I was done with the face at this point, and I was going in to just make the background blend in, but it kind of worked. I'd run out of, or the background that I'd used at first had dried overnight, so I had to mix some new background colors, which were close enough, but they weren't quite exactly the same. Here at this point I painted his shirt. I just painted it whatever color wasn't blue and skin color. Skin tones. His shoulders look very small, but you know, I wasn't focusing on the shoulders. Oh, it took me like 3 minutes to paint all of his shirt and everything, because I was just like, whatever, I'm done. I also signed my name way too soon. I signed the portrait and then I was like, okay, I'm done. And then I realized, you know, I still have to shade the shirt and I still have to make it look a little normal looking. So that's what I did there. And then I was done. I think this is the end. So,
Only I look more humane.
as the model for that painting, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, we're so far. Wait, why do you
Yeah.
Do you think it's very, very realistic? Very accurate? There's no...
Wait, but why do you
None of the above.
There's nothing different. There's no difference. It's so realistic. Hyper realistic painting. You can't even tell that it's a painting, right? That's what he looks like in real life. The camera makes him look less like a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, appreciate your modeling. Your face was very hard to paint. It was very difficult, but mostly because I don't know how to paint. Any final comments?
That'd be $99.99.
The price for it?
Yeah.
No, you have to pay me $99.99.
No, for modeling.
You only model. Okay, well I'm selling the painting to you,
No, you're not.
so your modeling is useless. How do you feel about
I'll
that?
sell it back to you for free.
Okay, well, thanks, man. Boom.